It was a scene that honestly felt ripped from a political thriller, but it happened right there in broad daylight in Los Angeles. On June 12, 2025, United States Senator Alex Padilla approached a press conference. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was speaking about recent ICE raids, and the senator wanted to ask a question to challenge the official story. But instead of getting an answer, he was met with force. Law enforcement officers surrounded him and, in a really shocking turn of events, placed him in handcuffs. They led him away from the cameras as the press conference continued. But the real story was no longer about the raids. It was about the man in cuffs. The footage of the incident spread like wildfire across the internet. It was raw, it was immediate, and honestly, it was deeply unsettling to many who watched it. This wasn't just a protester being removed. This was a sitting United States senator, an elected official representing millions of people, being physically restrained for trying to speak. The images were powerful because they seemed to confirm a growing fear among many Americans about government overreach. The sight of a senator being silenced so forcefully created a visceral reaction, making a complex political issue feel intensely personal and urgent for people far beyond the borders of California. Senator Padilla's own words after the event really captured the heart of the issue for his supporters. He framed his arrest not as an attack on him personally, but as a chilling preview of what ordinary, powerless people face every single day. If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, he stated, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers. This statement transformed his experience from a singular political clash into a symbol of a much larger struggle, connecting the dots between his public handcuffing and the private fears of immigrant communities across the nation. This moment quickly became more than just a news story, it became a turning point. It provided a clear, undeniable image that Democrats could use to rally their base. The incident wasn't just about immigration policy anymore, it was about the fundamental rules of democracy and the right to question authority without fear of being silenced. The sight of Senator Padilla's arrest crystallized the anxieties of the opposition, giving them a potent symbol to mobilize around and a stark warning of what they believe is at stake under the current administration. Immediately following the incident, the two political parties began constructing completely different stories about what had happened. For Democrats, the narrative was simple and scary. This was a dangerous abuse of power. California Governor Gavin Newsom posted on X, "If they can handcuff a United States senator for asking a question, imagine what they will do to you." This message was designed to resonate with a broad audience, tapping into a fundamental fear of unchecked authority. The focus was not on the specifics of immigration law, but on the method of enforcement and the suppression of dissent, painting a picture of an administration that bullies its critics into silence. Democratic strategists saw the event as a golden opportunity to unify their party. Christian Ramos, a prominent strategist, explained that the incident underlines the fact that the Republican Party and Donald Trump do not care about laws in this country. By framing the arrest this way, Democrats could sidestep messy policy debates and instead focus on a core value, the rule of law. The message was clear. This isn't about left versus right. It's about right versus wrong. It was a powerful way to bring different factions of the party together under one banner of opposition to what they see as authoritarian tactics. Republicans, however, painted a completely different picture. They cast Senator Padilla not as a victim, but as an instigator of chaos. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, claimed Padilla was shoving law enforcement officers and displayed incredibly aggressive behavior. This narrative flips the script, portraying law enforcement as the professionals maintaining order and the senator as a lawless agitator. This version of events aims to appeal to voters who are concerned about public disorder and who believe that political figures should be held to a high standard of conduct, not engage in stunts. Prominent Republican leaders quickly echoed this sentiment, accusing Democrats of being radical and extreme. House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested Padilla's actions might even warrant a censure, a formal reprimand from Congress. Senator Lindsey Graham dismissed the whole affair as political theater, saying Padilla got what he wanted, he's on TV. The White House joined in, accusing Democrats of intentionally obstructing law enforcement and thinking they can act without consequences. This counter-narrative portrays the Democratic Party as one that encourages lawlessness and undermines the very institutions trying to keep the country safe. The Democratic response to Padilla's arrest was swift, coordinated and multifaceted. It was a textbook example of turning a political crisis into a rallying cry. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus took immediate action, leading a march directly to the offices of the top Republican leaders in Congress. Their demand was simple and direct. They wanted Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to come before Congress and answer for the actions of her department. This was not just a protest, it was a formal political challenge, using the power of their offices to demand accountability and keep the story in the headlines. The incident also became an instant fundraising tool, demonstrating how quickly political machines can capitalize on moments of high emotion. Campaigns for prominent Democrats like Senator Adam Schiff in California and Senator Cory Booker in New Jersey sent out emails and social media posts referencing Padilla's arrest. They used the outrage generated by the viral images to solicit donations, arguing that more resources were needed to fight back against the administration's tactics. This rapid mobilization of financial support showed a party that was not just reacting, but actively organizing for the political battles ahead. The condemnation of the arrest extended far beyond Washington, D.C. and California. Democratic governors from states like Illinois and Maryland released strong statements, framing the incident as an attack on freedom itself. They argued that the Trump administration was weaponizing the justice system for political purposes. This chorus of voices from across the country helped amplify the message, showing a united front against the administration. It suggested that the concerns were not just partisan complaints, but were shared by leaders responsible for governing millions of Americans in different parts of the country. This event is also being used to fuel a broader protest movement. Activist groups like the Working Families Party are organizing nationwide demonstrations under the banner of No Kings. These protests are planned to coincide with a military parade in Washington, D.C., creating a powerful split-screen moment for the nation. One side will see a display of military might, while the other will see citizens marching against what they perceive as rising authoritarianism. Padilla's arrest has become a key piece of evidence for these groups, a real-world example they can point to as they call people into the streets. Senator Padilla's arrest did not happen in a vacuum. It occurred in a city already simmering with tension. Los Angeles has been the site of major protests against the Trump administration's hardline immigration policies. The federal government has taken the extraordinary step of federalizing the California National Guard and deploying United States Marines in the city, moves that a federal judge has already ruled unlawful. In response, the mayor of Los Angeles imposed a nighttime curfew to quell the unrest. Padilla's handcuffing poured gasoline on an already smoldering fire, symbolizing the escalating conflict between federal power and local resistance. Democrats argue that this is part of a disturbing pattern of intimidation aimed at their party. They point to a series of other recent events: the detention of a Democratic mayor in New Jersey, the arrest of a judge in Wisconsin, and the indictment of a congresswoman. They even cite the arrest of the president of a major labor union, David Huerta of SEIU, California, during a separate peaceful protest. By connecting these dots, they are building a case that these are not isolated incidents, but a coordinated campaign to use the instruments of the state to silence political opponents and create a climate of fear. This aggressive enforcement has real-world consequences that go far beyond politics. In California and other states, increased ICE raids have sent waves of terror through immigrant communities. The United Farm Workers president, Teresa Romero, has spoken about how farm workers are terrified but feel they have no choice but to continue working. Meanwhile, business owners in areas affected by the protests and curfews report that their revenues have plummeted. This shows how the high-level political battle is creating instability and hardship for everyday people trying to work, run a business, and live their lives. Ultimately, the handcuffing of Senator Alex Padilla has become a defining moment in the nation's ongoing debate over immigration and the limits of power. It has provided Democrats with a powerful and unifying symbol of government overreach, while Republicans have used it to reinforce their message of law and order against what they call democratic chaos. As protests continue and legal battles over federal authority play out in court, this single dramatic event will be remembered as the moment when the political tensions simmering across the United States boiled over into plain sight for all to see.